Hi, welcome to How It Plays. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Francis.
And today we're going to talk updates.
Yeah, we love updates.
Yeah,
These are always so much fun. They're kind of like debriefs.
I think so. I think we just like to, like we do a lot of playthroughs. I think lately we've been enjoying these sessions where we kind of just sit down and talk about what we've been playing, some themes, things going on, updates on our website that we're still working towards getting that out into the ether at some point. But I think it's time. Every couple weeks or so, we'll give one of these updates. But today we've got some pretty interesting topics, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And we kind of I don't know, I guess we blended. We were going to do like 2 different videos because we usually do an update video. But then I'm like, why don't we just do grab a couple games that we've been playing recently and we'll just talk about them. And we've been for whatever reason, we've been kind of playing games in groups. Not in groups of people.
I was about to say.
But in groups of games. Types of games. So we did a whole bunch of space games. Yeah. For a while.
Thematic groups, yeah.
Yeah, and we've been really getting into these more adventure type games. So we're going to talk today.
And I think I think I'm the one who sort of leads some of these
You do lead these charges because I play everything.
Yeah, she'll play anything. So what'll happen is I'll come down, I'll grab a game that I'm looking at on the shelf, and I'm like, you know what, I've been eyeing this up every time I walk by it because I work down in the basement. I have to walk past our games every time I go to work. And I always when a game will catch my eye, I'm like, ooh, I hadn't played that in a long time, and I'll bring it upstairs, I'll start reading the rules, and all of a sudden she's hovering, and then we're playing it. So
it's like if you ever can't find me, just pull out a game.
Just pull out a game, and she appears, and all of a sudden her whole schedule clears, and she's like, I'm ready, let's just play. So that's what we've been doing, and I think let's just first start out with our website, because normally we like to have a pretty good thick meaty update on our website, but since we have such a small amount to discuss on it,
I know
we had to pack this schedule with other things.
Yeah, so we have I think we had shared with you guys before, we have a meeting every Tuesday at noon with our design development team. And we are in the process now of just heads down development. So if you've ever, and I wish I could relate it to building a house or something like that. I guess maybe we could, right? So if you've ever built a house or you've seen a house be built, you'll see you'll see the framing go up, and that's exciting. And you're planning everything, and you kind of know what it's going to look like, and you pick out all the crap that you want to put in the house. Yeah. And then the outside of the house kind of goes up, and it sort of looks like a house, but there's nothing inside. And they're still working on stuff, and from the outside, you can't really see what any of that is, but you know it's happening. But
they're building stuff. It's it's like that show with Chip and Joanna Gaines, right?
It's like Fixer Upper.
Fixer Upper. And then you're kind of on the outside when the outside is all done, but they're still working the inside, and then you get the reveal, and then they pull the 2 big boards away with the fix of the old house, and then you see this reveal. We haven't gotten that yet. Yeah. So we're months potentially.
Yeah, I think so. And of course, everybody has been affected by COVID and work issues,
and they are too,
and all that kind of thing. I know they lost a couple of developers and whatever, but it is what it is. We're not really on a timeline with this. We just want to make a really good product, and they actually they had offered to kind of strip some of the features that we wanted in order to bring it sooner. Yeah. We're like, nope, sorry.
There's no rush, right?
There's absolutely no rush.
There's other tools out there you all are using and you're all happy with. And, we're adding just another option, another tool, but when we do bring it to market, we want it to be worth using.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're not going to deliver something just for expediency. We want it to be right. And so this is the slow play here. Right. We're playing the strategic game.
This is my game.
This is her game.
It's killing him.
So it is. I'm more of a just get it done and get it out, but she's definitely much more of the analytical.
Methodical.
Yeah, and she's very much good at really making sure that the product we deliver is quality, and this is all her. A lot of it's her design, so you'll get to see a lot of that come out in it, and I think you'll like it. Yeah, this really is something impressive to see, and hopefully the developers are able to really make that shine.
Yeah, I think they will. So we're in a good place with it. We'll be able to share more with you soon-ish. Yeah. But maybe on our next update we'll have a little bit more to share. But as of right now, it's just a lot of heads down work on both ends, on our end and on theirs too, to get some stuff ready.
So our main topic for this sort of talk session.
Oh, I thought we were going to say quickly mention what games we've been playing.
Oh well, this is kind of it though.
No, it's not. Is it?
This is really it.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, no.
That's not true.
One other game.
That's not 2 other games.
All right, let's go ahead. What are the other games?
Can we please? Well, I didn't. I had to sit and watch this be played while I forget. I don't even know what I was doing.
When's this?
You played Role Player again.
Oh yeah, that was
remember?
just the other day.
That was just the other day. It was my birthday.
So
Kind
pulled Role Player off the shelf. Played that the other day.
Yeah.
Before that, and we posted this on Instagram, we played Too Many Bones.
Yes.
And we played it a few times, and that was just one of those games that I saw on our shelf. I had, I've got it fully blinged out. I've got, multiple expansion characters. I've got the upgraded health chips, so they're nice and meaty. Like I've got all the good stuff. I got the neoprene travel mat. Yeah. Like that's so like all the extra bells and whistles I got. And I'm like, we haven't played this enough. And I think we pull it out, we played it again, and realized why we don't play it as much as we do, because it is such a swingy, punishing game.
It's the first time that we played, or the first couple of times we played, it was, my takeaway from it was, you need to have a relationship with this game. Yeah. Like, you need to understand exactly how your character that you're playing works. And that is, I think, the fun of that game.
Sure,
is figuring out, like, okay, what should I be upgrading first, and what should I, what's beneficial to upgrade, while also experiencing this really swingy system. The first game that we pulled out and played, we lost immediately.
The first battle, the first actual battle.
Before we even had turns, because you have
they had higher initiative.
They had higher initiative. It was a bunch of baddies that all built off of each other, and they killed us before we even started the game. So I was like,
so
okay, let's go eat dinner.
These orcs that if there's other ones out there, they get an extra attack die. So it's like you roll 3 attack dice, and all of a sudden you've got 6 damage. Your character has 4 health. Right. You're dead, and you didn't even get to go yet.
You didn't even get to do your stuff. Yeah,
how is this even possible? So there's definitely some issues with that.
Then we got through a couple of others.
Yeah, we did it again. We finally got through it. We started making it work, and then once you start to get upgraded, it becomes, you can start mitigating a lot of these weird events.
Yeah.
But again, there's still a lot of swing to it.
It still is swingy, because I think I don't know if we were fighting the final boss.
Yeah, the final boss.
It was the final fight, right? And you got knocked out.
I got one hit.
Almost immediately.
One hit by this wolf.
And so it was just me fighting off all the rest of these bosses, and I think, did we win?
I guess it could be questionable. I think you had a reroll or two in there. That weren't
no,
legal.
we did at the very end. We just kept playing.
Yeah, I was I just need to see how this thing turns out, because it's just the fact that I got one shot at the beginning of the round, dead, and I didn't have a chance to do anything. I'm like, this is what I don't like about it.
Yeah.
Because that can leave you kind of like, there should be. I'd like to at least have a chance, and I didn't have a chance. So in any case, that was our Too Many Bones experience. It'll come out again at some point.
When we forget why we started.
Yeah, because I love the feel of the dice. I love the quality of the dice, the feel of the chips.
Yeah.
It's a very simple tactical game. But again, it's swingy, punishing.
I like the combat system though.
Combat's fun.
I always want to call them pogs. They're like slammer pogs.
No, the chips. Yeah, I like them because I think that chip theory is known for that.
The health of the monster or of you.
Coming from
the red chips, and then
the
system is really
Hoplomachus series, or those gladiator series that they first had, where all the gladiators had chips, and it was very simple tactical.
That's cool.
I like how they implemented it into a role playing game system, but again, it's too swingy for me.
Yeah, it's too many swings.
I cannot have this. Too many swings. Yes, too many swings.
Anyway, so then we had pulled out Role Player, which I didn't get to play with you.
You didn't.
It's
a fun one.
I was kind of crabby because I really enjoyed that game.
No, we were busy hosting, so
I know, hosting my birthday party.
This is the price, sometimes
I wasn't really hosting.
Some of us have to veer off and play games.
Mom.
Yeah, you were visiting. So, and I got to play games.
So it was good. Yeah. So I think those were the two, and then we've been playing these.
So all of these that we're going to talk about now. So
and a couple of other things that I guess we'll talk about later, because we're getting ready to do
things?
Well, we've been looking at some other games that we're getting ready to do for Kickstarter next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then I didn't know we're talking about that today.
We're not talking about that today.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking out loud.
Oh, you were thinking out loud, because I'm like, what else do we have on our agenda here that I didn't know about?
I was just thinking about
you can't drop stuff on me while we're filming.
I know. Sorry.
So, in any case, forget she said any of that. What we're talking about in this session are app-driven games.
Okay.
And this is a very heated topic, and there's been an endless stream of videos about this because it's the hot topic, so everybody does video on it. So we might as well too. Because, look, we're not afraid to share our opinions here. And I think a lot of folks are in the same boat. But there are many different sides to this.
Yeah.
I don't think any side's right and any side's wrong,
yeah,
to be honest. It's just opinion, right? And everybody's entitled. Opinions are like, what? Everybody's got one? So, but it's true, everybody has one. And, our opinion may or may not line up with everyone else's, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because...
But it's still a really interesting discussion.
It's an interesting discussion.
And it's one that we have offline all the time.
All the time.
So,
I think we should share our opinions with you all. And just the fact, if you've been following us and you've been watching our feeds and our videos, and you watched our Descent video, you kind of know where we stand on this. And it's pretty obvious that we are not against app-driven games.
Yes.
We'll just go ahead and say it.
Of course not. Yeah, we're not like... Because the thing is, there are people out there that are like, I'm a board game...
Purists.
Purist.
Right? Could you call them a board game purist?
I guess. A board game Puritan?
Puritan.
Maybe?
So they believe that board games should be made of cardboard and wood.
Maybe. I don't know that that's what they believe, but they definitely believe that apps should not be a part of your board game experience.
Right.
Which I get to an extent.
To an extent.
Okay.
I would agree.
I love board and this, again, the reason why I love this discussion so much is because it really gets at why do you play games? What is it about the experience that you enjoy? For a lot of people, it's unplugging.
Yes.
And I would say that's the same for me. I'm not like turned off by a game because it has an app in the same way that I'm not always turned off by a game because it's got combat. I may not always be in the mood to do it if I've had a lot of screen time or I've been like doing a lot of work lately. I may not want to sit and look at another scrn. My iPad's never charged. We always have to use yours. So,
that's true. So she's not
so I'm not always
devices,
ready. I'm not a big device person. But it's not gonna, I'm not going to say like, I don't want to have that experience because it has an app. So what I think it comes down to really is the fact that there are folks out there that say if a game has an app, it is not really a board game. Okay. Where I think I would argue that what a board game really is, or what a tabletop game really is some kind of game experience, could be technological, that has a required tactical component experience. Something necessary that you have to touch, feel, hold in your hand. What did I say? Tactical?
Tactical.
Oh, definitely not tactical.
I was like, now we're talking about just about any game on the
tactile experience. So you need to have something that you're manipulating, that I think is what makes it like a tabletop game.
Yes.
Because you could also argue that like not all games are board games, right? So not all card games.
Is a card game a board game?
Is a card game really a board game?
Is a pure dice game a board game? Do you need a board to be a board game, or could you have just tiles?
Or a player mat.
Or a player mat, does that even count?
Yeah. So
you could argue 100 different ways.
Yes.
So do you go back to games like The Dark Tower, where there's a giant electronic tower in the middle of the table?
You have to explain to me what this was.
Or if you have like Electronic Battleship, is that not a board game? Because
Mall Madness.
Right. Any one of those games, or the Monopoly game where you swipe the credit card, is that not a board game because it has an electronic component? You could argue this 10 ways to summer, but the truth is, is it a game that sits on your table?
Yeah.
Is it a game that you need physical components to play, whether they be cards, dice, meeples, or player boards, or an actual board?
Right. Yeah.
Then, to me, that's a board game.
I think that that's at least what differentiates a board game, or we would call a board game, from a video game. And in a lot of these cases, I think people are very quick to say, oh, well, it's a video game with that happens to have components. And everybody's kind of saying the same thing. It's just that I would probably argue the inverse is true.
Yes, the inverse is true. So. I think because if you can play the game on a device independently of anything else, then it's a video game. Yeah. If you can play the board game by itself, is it a board game? Or if you have to combine the two, where does it land?
Right, exactly.
I think it's a hybrid.
It is, and we have there's other games as well that, like for example, I love the app because it's a scoring app, right? And the scoring might be like very point salad-y and or convoluted or something like that. And in a lot of these cases, and we're going to go through each of these that we've been playing and kind of speak to the highlights of the app. Is the app really necessary? Are there games, certainly in this collection, that I'm like, app's not really doing much for it.
Yeah.
And others that it certainly is more of a tool.
Or maybe the app's doing too much.
Or maybe the app's doing too much, exactly. So that is the discussion for today.
Yeah.
So if you're into that, you can continue.
So we've got 4 games that we feel are...
Okay.
Yeah, 4 games.
I was counting.
It's all right here.
Math.
4 games that I know we felt fit this category of hybrid board game / app, right? And we consider all of these board games, period.
Yep.
Even though they rely heavily on apps, you can't use one without the other.
Right.
It's
like love and marriage.
Yeah, you can't. No, we can't have one without the other. So you absolutely need both the components. You have to have it set up on the table. You have to have an app, whether it's on your phone or your tablet or your computer, in conjunction with all this, or up on your TV. Like, there's many, many ways you can swing this. But you definitely need to have people sitting around a table moving components.
Right.
And to me, that's playing a board game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So, and people may completely disagree, and that's cool. That's so cool. But we'll start with one at a time, and we'll go through. And I think we should start with oldest to newest. We'll start with Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Okay. Right? And the 4 games are this. So it's Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth, Destinies, and then Descent, Legends of the Dark.
Yes.
Right? Those 4. They are all games that require apps. 3 of which have been produced by
Fantasy Flight Games. I know. I was like,
Games.
is it okay if we do like all these like
so we're leaning, but here's the thing. They do app games now. Like, that's just what they do, you know, with these series. They convert them.
We probably could have included like Chronicles of Crime, but that's also Lucky Ducks. It's like we don't want to be like, these 2 companies that are all doing app
obviously
games,
there's a trend here with certain companies who lean into certain things, and these are the ones that we have in our collection, and it just made the most sense. And we played all of these in the last week.
Yes.
So
mostly 2 weeks. Probably,
the last 2 weeks we've played every one of these games. They're very fresh, and it wasn't for the first time. They were these are multiple plays of these games under our belt. So we do have opinions on them, and we will talk to the experience. So Mansions of Madness we played. I've played the older version, non-app, and I've played the newer version with the app. And how do you think this game incorporates the app, in your opinion?
Well, and this is why we're doing this in the context, I think, of all of these games, because certain ones definitely are, for me, were better experiences than others. And I mean, in Mansions, I think the app was helpful. I think it probably, like in this instance, I think it could have been a book explaining to us what's going on, or kind of DMing the experience. Right. I'm thinking about the combat in this one with the monsters and everything. Is what I felt we were doing with Mansions. As much as I enjoyed the experience, I didn't feel connected to the experience. I don't know if that was the app necessarily,
or is it the game?
It might be the game, because what I feel like you're doing in this particular game is like, it's almost like every turn you're bringing out new tiles and stuff, which is exciting to an extent, but it's almost like I would have rather played Mansions of Madness as a video game. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? Yeah, I see. Like, it's almost like I would play a game where I'm doing, you know, my kind of investigating, and I'm clicking on stuff, and I'm picking up the journal articles and all of that kind of thing. Because it's like I always pick up, like in this one, I always pick up like a journal, and you can like read the journal and like figure out what's going on. I never read the journal because I always forget that I have it, because it's not like in any kind of inventory or anything like that. So I think, again, it's not necessarily the app that's the issue for me with this, but I don't know that it necessarily adds enough to make it like the most stellar exploration experience for me, if that makes sense.
All right. So let me give my thoughts.
Okay.
All right. So coming from having played the other one, and I think the apps solve the capability to solo and fully co-op play these games. Because in Mansions of Madness, someone had to be the we'll call it the overseer. I don't like to use the term DM because they're not creating the story. Right, yeah. They're actually just hosting the game, really, and being the bad guys. They're just playing bad guys, and really they craft the experience because they can be really nasty to the players, and it really create sort of an unfun experience. And with Mansions of Madness, a lot of the game is in discovery. And if you think about Mansions of Madness, it's a very micro experience because you are investigators inside of a house or inside of a building. Right. And if the only like pullback you get is if you go outside the building and then you're in alleyways and streets and maybe a little piece of the property, but most of the activity occurs with inside this mansion or hotel or whatever building you happen to be in.
Yeah.
And in these sort of Arkham horror themed games, there's this looming dread that's always there, right? So you always feel inclined to have to keep progressing because the longer you spend in a room, every round monsters are spawning. Right. That you don't ever get a break. And in a game where you're trying to explore, and this is the one bit I don't like about these, there's this pressure. And I guess it's applied intentionally because they want you to keep moving. They don't want you to feel like, all right, I'm kind of bored, I'm just standing here doing nothing. But like something they could do to fix that would be like, all right, well, if there's no monsters, let me have more than one action and a move action. Right,
which I think we'll talk about when we start talking about Descent.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm like really constrained to do the best part of the game, which is explore. And interact with these things. And one thing I really do not like about the app in this is when you have to solve these puzzles. They're cool in that you have to solve a puzzle, but the fact that I have to roll successes to do a move on a puzzle, I'm going to be stalled for 4 turns trying to get through a puzzle because I have bad rolls. I know how to solve the puzzle by looking at it. I can see which little things I need to move to make it happen. But I have to roll this many successes, right? And while I'm sitting here rolling successes every turn, monsters are spawning. So now I'm fighting monsters while I'm trying to open up this little box.
Well, and I think that's where I said, like, I feel disconnected from the experience, because if you put a puzzle in a game that Francis, the gamer, has to solve, I feel that I'm bringing my own mental capacity to that experience. And that puzzle is like a game within a game. It's like this meta experience that I get to have. Not my character that I'm playing, who might be, doesn't have a lot of intuition and therefore can't solve the puzzle as easily, but me, I want to be in that experience. I want to solve that puzzle. And if I can see the solution, I feel like I should be able to do that. And because, like you said, you kind of get there, you're like sitting there stalled, waiting, you're like very disconnected from the individual that you're playing, and also having to fight off all these monsters.
So that's where the app, I think, fails in this game, is in that the implementation of that puzzle solving piece. It's really cool, but give me the puzzle and let me just solve it. Right in here, right now. Don't make me roll dice. Don't make me rely on my character. Let me figure it out, solve the puzzle, and then let's move on, right? Give me more time to explore the map. I don't like it. But what the app does really well is manage the monster encounters, because it tells you how many spaces they move, who they're going to attack. It tells you how to manage dread, which has always been a pain, bookkeeping in Mansions of Madness. It tells you what type of damage you're going to do. You tell it what type of weapon you're using. It tells you how much you do to them, what they do to you back, if possible. You don't really have to track all that. And this is what gets really tough about Mansions of Madness in these like Arkham horror games, is like having to look at these little tokens to tell you what the monster stats are and how those apply to combat. And how your weapon applies and what you're rolling. And the dice rolling system is very simple, which isn't handled by the app. So the app really just handles set up the building. Here's the areas you can search. Here's the doors that are open.
Here's what's coming out.
Here's what's coming out. Here's the tiles. Here's the monsters. And that's it. Everything else is up to you as the player to do, which I think a lot of it is managed on the board and in your cards and in your dice. So I think the app doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't try to control the game too much. But in certain bits like those puzzles, it does. And in the
and by rushing the experience.
And by rushing the experience.
So it's kind of like, it's twofold, right? So that app really took the place of the nasty overseer, who is rushing you through the game, who is making monsters come out, who it is creating that experience, I think, and it is influencing the game in a way. As kind of an alternate player, and less as a third-party bystander just reading you what comes out next, sort of, and managing your bookkeeping, which is where I like the apps to be. Like, be a tool. Don't be a tool. Don't be a tool. But, provide some kind of benefit to us as a gamer without rushing the experience, especially in a game where the experience is in the story.
But I think there may be those of you who enjoy that pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
And without that, it wouldn't be as fun because
Right,
you
right.
like the theme of the overarching dread and this
Yeah.
pressure to keep moving and your insanity and all that stuff. But that's to each his own, right? And it's just not something that I enjoy.
I think so at the end of we played this the other night, and at the end of it, and it was a long game.
Yeah.
It was like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
or
almost 2
it was
hours,
Almost 2
probably.
hours, and it was very late. And at the end, like there was this, it was like a lock puzzle that we were trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And we just like abandoned the game and just tried to figure out the puzzle.
just figured the puzzle.
So if that tells you anything about kind of the app
Mm-hmm.
experience, we ended the game playing basically an
puzzle.
app puzzle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that was the fun part.
Yeah, that was like, it was so disconnected. It
was
just
extremely
didn't belong.
disconnected, yeah.
It really doesn't belong. So for us,
Yeah.
look, we like Mansions of Madness.
Yes.
We don't love it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the app is applied well in certain instances and not in others. And I think
Right.
there's a lot of room for improvement here. And I hope that at some point they make that decision to
I will
to
say
fix it.
the other thing about the apps too, and I may just be naive because I don't manage the app,
Mm-hmm.
but like for example, when I think we started with chapter 2 and we started setting up the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, we already played this one.
That's not the app's fault. That was my fault.
But here's the thing though, it was because why? You
I had to
deleted
reinstall the
you had
app.
to reinstall the app.
Yeah.
So it might have been a couple years.
But I
and
had
now we-
I had installed it under a different Apple ID.
You
That's
did?
why it was all my fault. So
but
don't blame
never
the app
mind.
for
It
that. That's
was
not saying don't shame the app. That was a user error.
I know, but I'm just saying
It
like,
should have. It does keep track of which ones you finished.
okay, as long as you have the same Apple ID,
As long as you have the same Apple ID.
if
But
you don't,
that's just a weird thing with
then
Apple.
you just have to remember.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my fault. But okay, so that's Mansions of Madness. Let's move on to Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Okay, so Lord of
move
the
on.
Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
We played this as well, and I really like this one. I'll be honest.
This one, it was a lot more exploring.
Yeah, so this one's more, just imagine, this one's more macro, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure if you've played this, you understand what I'm saying. Because you're on a land map.
Right.
And your land map is really, it's like just you're traveling through forests and fields and mountains, and you're, however, we were 2 Lord of the Rings characters, and we're exploring regions, hunting for thieves or whatever they were.
Mm-hmm.
And the app sort of just says, here's the map, here's your objective, go figure it out.
Right.
And then you go do it, right? So you're moving on, and then you're interacting with the app to let it tell you that okay, this is what you've discovered on this tile. Put out these points of interest. You can interact with any of them. If you interact with them, you can do tests, and it's very similar in that aspect to the way Mansions of Madness plays.
Just on a much bigger scale. So instead of
Grander.
having like one room with several search tokens and things you can encounter,
Right.
you have map tiles.
You have map tiles, right? So you're doing that, and then monsters are spawning on the map. It's telling you what type of monsters are spawning and where, and then you manage them moving, you manage them attacking, but you have the app track you're fighting, and it knows how much damage to apply. It knows how to do all the bookkeeping fiddly
Right.
stuff that you have to track based on the monster type and all that weird stuff. But everything you do is managed by your cards, and it's a card-driven game of success or fail versus dice, which
Right.
I think in and of itself is a much better experience, in my opinion. Yeah. Because just these dicey games are so swingy.
Well, and because you're able to manage, while you can mitigate your dice rolls, there are ways to do that. I feel like with the card driven, you're able to, you're managing a deck basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always feel like I have a little bit more control.
You
there.
definitely have more control over your deck, and it's just a much more. And I think that the experience is just a little bit smoother. The app doesn't really take over more than that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And gives you a little bit of the narrative, and it kind of guides you through your exploration when you're testing, and you just tell it how many successes you've had, right? Or if you succeeded or failed or whatever. And it'll tell you whether or not you've achieved what you needed to do.
Yes.
So you don't even know in some instances if you've succeeded enough to be able to complete the test. But the app will do that, which is pretty cool from a storytelling perspective. I think that it does lean a little bit harder into the app with regards to storytelling. Like there's just there really is no like cards or anything that you'll ever
No
get.
narrative text.
Yeah, like you'll just get like you just have to read what happens and then you go from there, which I think is like the trade-off, right? Because you're not getting a card, and I guess it's better for the company. They don't have to print out multiple decks of cards that are going to, be your encounter cards and what happens, and then there's no surprise. Because always the difficulty of these cards is when you draw them, you read it, but you're trying not to read what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the same goes for, like, as much as we love, like, our Red Raven games, too, when you're going into that book as another player, you're always, like, trying to just read the part that the other person's encountering, and like not read too much of the other stuff.
Yeah, like I think, like as an aside, like adding an app to handle the book for the Red Raven games would be a phenomenal addition. Like some of you may think that's blasphemy, but I think it would be huge if they did that, and you wouldn't have to manage that anymore and worry about the spoilers. So like that's where Lord of the Rings really handles it well. One thing I found a little weird, and that might just be the design of the game, is when you have these tactical map battles now. So you get to, you find the thieves' den, and now you have to have a thieves fight out, and then you have these two big square blocks where you're actually putting in like obstacles and stuff like that, and now you're doing a tactical miniatures battle. And there's really no need for an app, but it's there, and it's just tracking like damage on the monsters. But in that point, it's like it just gets really weird for me.
Yeah, it's just like, I guess the app should just be like, tell us if you won or lost, I guess.
Yeah, and it just lets you battle it out on the map, but it's just, I don't know, that to me, that just seems very disconnected. I didn't see a need for that.
Right.
And that just is the design of the game. I thought, I would have been happy if it just stayed on the surface of the larger map and let everything happen there.
Right, yeah.
But I guess if you're saying, here, I'm in one location.
I mean, what I like about it, though, is that it does kind of zoom in. I think that's the idea. It's like, okay, well, we're fighting these monsters in this place. Let's zoom in on this tactical map, and now you can see, like, okay, there's a big rock over there, and there's like a
and the rock
has
like defensive benefits and all that stuff. But it's like, I was kind of iffy on that. But I think the way that Lord of the Rings: Journeys to Middle-earth integrates the app is so much better than Mansions of Madness. I didn't feel like we were rushed.
Right,
like your Doom track goes up, and then you'll know when monsters are coming. But I didn't feel like it was as tight as Mansions of Madness.
Right.
Because monsters came, but I was ready for them by the time they came. I'm like, you know what, you're coming.
Yeah, it was definitely much more of a calm experience. And one thing we didn't mention about Mansions of Madness, if you're not familiar with the game, is that the madness aspect of it also comes into play and makes it a very different experience.
Yeah, if you go crazy.
So you collect, and this also contributes to the kind of impending doom of the game, but if you exceed the amount of insanity that you accrue because you're encountering all this terrible stuff, so you're getting really stressed
it's like stress
out. Yeah, and if you get too much, then you go insane, and your end game condition changes. That part I love.
Privately, that was just really cool.
That part I absolutely
But here's the weird thing about that app, and we didn't well, all of a sudden it'll say, okay, this round, this investigator, you suffer 2 sanity damage for whatever reason. Oh, you trip and fell, you take 2 sanity damage, and I'm like,
it's another just randomness.
What is that?
Thing.
Like, why is that happening to me? And so out of nowhere, like this, I'm trying so hard not to get hurt.
Yeah.
And you're just gonna say, okay, you fell down and you just got hit by 3. You took 3 damage because I said so, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the way the game is made. And the way that this theme is supposed to be.
But I think that's the other thing, that it does push you in that direction, because the whole idea of the game is that you do go mad, and now your end game condition is different, and now where you had a co-op experience, it may not.
No,
be
it's suddenly not. But that's
But
fine.
anyway.
But like the randomness of that just. Maybe it's just the game. Maybe I just don't like the game anymore. I don't know. But
anyway, not to digress on that, but that was one thing I wanted to
so I think Lord of the Rings, Journeys to Middle-earth, the app is just, to me, it seemed a lot more well suited for the experience. And it was just an overall better, smoother experience. I don't feel like the app takes over too much, because I felt like what we had going on the board, I'm still engaged on my character on the board.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Cool.
So let's move.
So do you want to move to
Destinies?
Do we stay? Okay.
No, we go to Destinies. I think we're going to finish with Descent. Okay. All right. So
you want to move on to Destinies?
Densities by Lucky Duck.
This isn't one that we have done a playthrough of. It was very hot.
There was a lot of buzz on this. Yeah. A lot of activity going on out there. So we didn't know really what to expect getting this one. I knew it was an app game, but I didn't know what the experience would be.
Right.
In the app. And It is a vastly different experience than any of the games we've covered so far. So Mansions of Madness.
Which is why we wanted to include it.
Yeah, we definitely want to include it. Well, I mean, it definitely fits the app-driven games because the app does all the game.
Right.
Like, the entire game is on the app.
Yeah.
Without the app, you wouldn't even be able to...
Like, I guess you could move the guys around a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll even talk about that in a little bit. But, so, Destinies is really a story game. It's not I wouldn't call it an adventure game. I wouldn't call it a combat game.
No.
I wouldn't call it a tactical game in any sense of the word. It is an adventure game.
Yeah.
And it is an adventure game.
It's a linear
adventure game where you just take tests on your stats for everything you do.
Yeah.
You have items that kind of mitigate some of those tests. You have ways to kind of make your skills better so your tests are easier. But at the end of the day, the game pushes you to the end.
Right.
The app pushes you to the end.
It drives you in one direction.
Yep.
Towards the end of the game.
Towards the end of the game.
Everyone. Like, it pushes everyone
and this is
towards a conclusion.
A competitive game where you're all working towards one of two goals. And the first one to complete one of their destinies wins.
Right.
And the other players do not get to finish.
Right. So the game's over.
You don't find out your destiny at all. I don't know if that's intentional for replayability on that part, but
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I wouldn't replay the game either way because I already know what's going on. I already know what I've done. So you basically lay out tiles. The app tells you how to lay the land out, the tiles, and there's hidden tiles. When you go explore a tile, it opens up other connecting tiles. And it'll eventually create this landscape. Yeah, so you're on the micro level. You're in a town. You're moving around to town locations. You're interacting with different areas. The miniatures are microscopic in this game. I mean, microscopic. And I will show you.
We'll bring out. Do you want me to bring out a Descent?
No, I will bring it. Well, we'll do a triple comparison at some point.
Okay.
Because
maybe I can put up.
Here is a Mansions of Madness investigator. Right.
Okay. And this
there is a Destinies.
Destinies, man.
Character. So you can see the size difference, right? I mean, it is.
He's like, hey guys.
Ridiculous. It's like a child, right? Here's my little child. So, that's the size difference here. So, I guess it makes sense because the map tiles are only this big.
Right. It's literally. It's a macro. It's a micro.
A micro version of the other games where, like I said, it's just different. The app does 99% of the work for you in this game.
Yeah.
All you do in this game is move your miniature and roll dice.
Yeah, that's literally everything you do. And read the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Just so you understand what you're getting into.
Right. And I would say with this one, because like I said, we didn't play through it, we probably won't play through it, and we haven't
in its
really
entirety.
We
played through 2 or 3, I think.
No, I meant like on the channel.
Oh, no, definitely not doing it on the channel.
But just to give kind of
because once you see this, and if there's other reviewers who've played through this for you and you've watched it, they've basically ruined that mission for you because I wouldn't play it after that.
Well, and I wouldn't say just that mission either because like we've played this enough times that I can tell you that the experience is exactly the same every time. Pretty much.
Well, we've played through it twice, so we'll be fair.
More than twice.
We played through the first mission twice, and then we played through the second mission once. So we've played it 3 times. Right? Or we played 3 missions.
More than that.
We played 3 missions.
Right.
I think there's 5 in total.
Yeah.
And out of the 3, the experience was the same every time.
Right. So, and the thing is, like you had said, so you have these two kind of like objectives.
Yeah, you're right. We played 3 times.
Yeah, I know.
But
more than 3 times.
I couldn't keep track of it because I think we've.
It's been more than that.
It feels samey, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the experience is the same every time, and I know this because we've played you play the multiple scenarios, but it's like it feels like the same. Like you would think that each person would have different destinies because everybody should have a different destiny, right? Like vastly different. It's marketed kind of like asymmetric. Everybody has different goals, but when you look at it, actually. It's like there's 4 goals and then they're split amongst different players. So, and this again, I think is to drive the story so that multiple people really are going towards the same thing. So like we might be 2 different characters, but one of your goals and one of my goals are identical. And then one of your goals and one of, let's say, like Aiden's goals or your son.
Like we may have to go kill the same people or save the same people.
Right.
But we're all fishing from the same pond.
Yeah, and that's, and again, that's probably intentional to keep the game tight and have people going after after different stuff,
Yep.
or after the same stuff, really.
Right.
But it's not. When I realized that, it was a little less like, oh, this is really my character's destiny.
No, it's kind of like disappointing because you're like, oh, that's all it is, and then it's like, when you play this game, you could literally, you're like I said, you're just moving your character and you're exploring a part of the the location. The app's telling you what happens and what you can do there. And if you just happen to go the wrong direction and get caught into interacting with certain people or places, it may be not at all beneficial to your destiny.
Right.
At all. Not to your fault.
Right.
But just because you chose the wrong direction. Or somebody else happened to choose the right direction, and now they're like this close to their destiny, and you haven't even achieved one of your things yet. And you can see that unfold, and you're like, well, I'm screwed now. Like, I don't even have one of the things I need to get my destiny done, and, and I can tell they've got at least 2 or 3
well,
of them.
that happened with at least one of the plays that we did with Aiden, because we were, we were trying to, he was playing with us, and enjoying the story aspect of it, and he was getting, it was his first play, I think, and he was like kind of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do my destiny and stuff, and you had like all of your things done,
already
done. It was done,
and I didn't even
and
try.
he was like, oh, like
and then
I
ended it,
close.
And he was like, I didn't even get to go do my last thing or my first thing, and I'm like, and it's not that he was loafing around. He was doing went a direction that didn't benefit his character.
And it's intentional because, like, you could say, oh, well, there's clues in the game that tell you which direction you should go. That's true, but there's also a lot of distractions that are intentionally distractions. And again, another thing that happened in another play is that, like, if you do kind of take too long, things start going off the map, like closing. So like, you're like, oh, you don't really need that, like, stone circle anymore.
Yeah,
like, that's actually not important at all. We're gonna just shut that down, and the app will just be like, take this off the map, take this location off the map.
It's pushing you to the end, and I guess maybe it's trying to help the other characters get to their end. But it's like, I don't know. But again, the app does all the work. This game could be an app game.
Yeah.
So this is one where I think the app went a little too far.
I think so too.
And because there's just so little, that you're doing on the board aside from, like I said, moving a character and rolling dice. Like it's too little. Like
what my takeaway was with this one, with regards to like the miniatures and stuff. So I was like, they could have just used meeples. Yeah. Like, they didn't really even need to do...
And at as small as they are, you can't even tell them apart on the board.
You can't.
Like, I have to constantly keep looking.
And there's no, like, colored
There's no way to... Yeah, because they're... Like, I mean, I guess the effort was here because they really went out to do it, but it's like, I just don't know. And that's not that we're reviewing the game, but
I would have to check the app to figure out who I was going to.
Exactly. So, like,
on the map.
That's a bit tough for me to swallow. The components are nice. Like, it's really well done.
It is.
The art's really beautiful. Like, like all the bells and whistles are there. I just think there's just too much dependency on what the app's doing for you, for you to really feel like this is a really full board game experience.
Yeah, I would say that there were some things in there that just to me felt like they could have been cool, but were kind of gimmicky.
Yeah.
Like, you had like a QR scanner. So it's like you could, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why this was, because it never benefited me at all. But you can like test your destiny with different people in the town.
Have them talk to you about your destiny.
And it's like, okay, like I'll just hold, and you hold up your QR code, and it's like, that's kind of cool, but it doesn't. I mean, we could have done without it.
They never really tell you anything that matters.
And then what you end up doing at when you interact with a person or something on the board is you have like this whole list of things you can do, and you don't necessarily have to pick one. You just sit there and do all the things. And then when you're done, you like move on. That's it.
Yeah, it's all, again, it's too much. The app's doing too much.
It's very
there needed to be more
walking through the experience.
More table strategy.
Yeah.
And there was none.
Right.
Where in Mansions of Madness, Lord of the Rings, you're managing a deck. Mansions of Madness, you're managing items and you're managing dice rolls, because it's not just dice rolls. In Mansions of Madness, you've got items, you've got clue tokens, you've got things in the rooms that you're actually getting. You're interacting with stuff in a way that, like, there are items in Destiny, but they're really just ways to not have to roll dice.
It's well, I will say the one thing that I was kind of cool, and I think that like this is what Aiden liked too, is like when you do have an encounter, you can use your items, like, but in ways that you wouldn't think that you'd be able to use them. So it's like I might have acquired like a sacred artifact or something, like a cross or something like that, and it's like I have to go fight some monster, and I can choose to use like the blade that I have, or I could scan the QR code of the cross and like see what that does. And in a lot of cases, that would actually kill the monster instead of like using the knife or something. But there's nothing really that tells you that you might want to do that.
Yeah.
Like there's no real, like occasionally like, oh, I need to climb up this thing. Oh, I have a ladder. Okay, I'll
use the ladder. Or I'll use the rope to do this.
But like you can literally interact with anything else that you might have. And that part is like kind of cool.
Yeah.
But again, it's not something that has any strategy behind it. It's more just like, let's see what this does.
Just try it out, see what happens. But it's like, after the first few times it's cool, but then it's like, okay, all right, I get it. This is for that. This is for that.
You kind of get it.
Yeah, and it just, again, it's like the stories. You know, that's where the whole game is in the stories. But the app tells you the whole story. Yeah. And again, there's not as much you can do. I don't feel like you've got a lot of things happening on the table.
Yeah.
As they are in the the app, where these other games, more is happening on the table, and the app is kind of just walking you through and guiding you through that, and doing some bookkeeping for you. The app doesn't do any bookkeeping in this game because there is no bookkeeping to be had.
Yeah.
Right? There just isn't.
Yeah, and what I would say is that, like, I had asked Aiden what he thought, because we had played Descent, and we also played Destinies, and we can talk a little bit more about the difference maybe between the two when we talk about Descent. But he was very, very, like, well, Destinies is more like an investigation. He's like it's like solving a mystery, kind of. Except it kind of takes you along the like you're not really solving the mystery. You're just kind of like doing stuff, and eventually you might reach your thing. It was probably a lot more like the kinds of video games that they play. You know what I mean? Where they go out and they collect stuff and they walk around and they explore things and they build stuff, and eventually you win or you lose or whatever. Whereas Descent was a very different experience for him. So maybe we should talk about
we can talk. So let's move on to Descent.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to Descent, right? Descent. So if we want to talk about similarities between Destinies and Descent, they both use an app and they both start with a D. And that's where we'll stop.
And we acquired both of them maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah, we got them around the same time. And they have miniatures. That's about, I think that's as far as you go.
Yeah.
So they're two different games, right? So not that we're like...
It is definitely an apples to oranges kind of thing.
We can't really compare the two aside from the fact that they're app/board
But we are talking about app games. So
app games,
app experience.
And what do we consider to be more app-driven versus more board game, or a nice blend of the two? Now, when we come to Descent, and this is one that would really, cause a lot of controversy. And it's really funny because this one game could create all these discussions about app games, and like these have been coming out for years. Why is this one all of a sudden such a big deal? And I think it's because of the price point, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think just the fact that it's an app game, and out of all of these games, in my personal opinion, Descent does it so well that it's light years ahead of all of these other games, and I hope that they employ this system on these other games.
Absolutely.
Because if they were to employ the system that this uses in the Lord of the Rings game, over the freaking top. Over the top.
It's almost like Fantasy Flight has been working it. Like at every game that they put out, like every app-driven game they put out,
they're figuring it out.
They're getting it.
Right? They're getting closer.
And I feel like they really nailed it with this. And I know we did a video on Descent, but that was only after our one play. We since went out, purchased the game. And have been playing...
We're playing through the campaign,
so
4-player.
Yeah.
4-player, at home with two of the kids, playing through the campaign. We're on like the fifth mission, maybe. This is the one game where the kids are like, we say we want to play Descent? Yes. And these are kids who will come up with any excuse not to play these games.
Drop everything. Disconnect from everything they're playing. All their friends, bye. And they're down here
playing this game. So, because that speaks volumes.
It does.
Honestly, it really does. To get them to sit around a table for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and be fully invested in this board game is amazing in itself. And well worth every penny on this price tag, hands down. But when it comes to employment of the app, right? And where the differences are. The app does what everything else does. Here's how you set up the board, right? Here's the characters, we'll track that for you. Here's the items on the board that you can interact with. Good to go. Go. And you do everything else.
Right.
You tell the app that you're interacting with stuff, but you manage the movement, you manage the monsters. The app tells you how to move the monsters. Where it differs is it handles the combat for you.
Right.
Where you tell it what character is fighting what monster and what weapon you're using.
Yeah.
Which Mansions of Madness does to a degree. This one does a little bit further. It goes into much more detail with regards to tracking the monster's abilities, skills, health, armor, whether they fight you back. The other piece that this does is that because there's a crafting system in this game, it tracks you looting craftable ingredients, which is a must-have, because doing that outside the app would be
it
crazy.
Takes, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like that crafting phase, it takes that whole piece, which if you were to do, especially with 4 players, and after every scenario you had to bring out a whole 9 decks of cards with different loot and different, you know, okay, here's all the stuff that you got, and here's the stuff that you got, and let's see what we want to buy, would take a very long time.
It would take long. And you know what? It does take a long time, because you do something like this with Gloomhaven.
Yes, I was just about to say.
You do it outside of an app. You're sitting there handing out the new skills. You're going in envelopes. It's a good...
But it's almost like an hour.
It's an hour of just
that.
It was always like, if any of you have played World of Warcraft, after you've done a raid, you come back from a raid, or you come back from doing a whole bunch of dungeons, and you go back to town, and you're sitting there dealing with, it's like you could spend 40 minutes at the auction house cleaning up, selling items, getting rid of stuff, redoing your gear. And there's like this whole like after battle sort of like, all right, I got to do my cleanup now. That's what this is like. Descent has it, and there's been people who say, you know, I can't imagine dealing with 4 players in town afterwards. We do it just fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we pick who wants the upgrade. Okay, you like that? Look, we have enough ingredients to do this haft on this axe that goes to this character. Let's do it. Boom, there you go. The app tracks that now, because now that piece of that weapon has a 10% chance to stun an enemy. Who's tracking that?
Yeah.
The app is. Right? Like, why not?
Well, and I'll tell you, too, without giving too much away about how the game plays, there are 6 characters that can be played, but this is not a 6-player game. So some of the encounters that you have, scenarios that you're going to play, as you're going through, you're not playing as your character perhaps the entire time, unless perhaps maybe you will be, but not your entire team. So it's going to be a different team. You're building up all 6 of these characters as you go. So they are sort of active members of your party, even if you're not actively playing with that character in your party. So, for example, I was playing with the human, Bryn, and she got some stuff at the end of our first crafting session, and then the next that we played with a different character. She was kind of sitting out that.
Yeah, you had to bring in one of the other 2 characters.
Exactly.
It was mandatory, so you had to drop one of the other 4.
Yeah, but instead of having to keep all of her stuff in like an envelope and like remember when I brought her back out again, the app keeps track of all.
It knows
of
all of your gear, all of your inventory cards. It knows exactly what you have,
it's just
what
clean.
weapons. It's clean for it. Just does it so well, and the fact that there's so much meat in playing the game with managing your abilities, managing your player cards, your weapons cards, your item cards, your gear on the board, the tactical element of the combat. It's just done so well that I don't feel like the app's doing all the work for me.
Right.
And I don't feel like the app's pushing us.
That was the other thing.
We have time to explore. Like we're in a, okay, we killed all the monsters. Let's go. All right, I have time to go check out this cabinet of bookshelves. Okay, I'll use my actions. I'll search it. I'll get stuff out. Nope, there's no monster spawning. Let's do it again.
Right.
Like, cool. We get to explore and actually engross ourselves in the environment.
Yes,
right?
and in the theme.
And in the theme. And it just does it so dang well.
Right.
So, hands down, round of applause. Fantasy Flight nailed it for us. Like, and I think out of all the games we've covered here, like this one just does it the best. It's the best mix of things, and I really hope they employ that sort of system in these older games. I don't think they necessarily need to do a version 3 of like Mansions of Madness. You don't need a third. Use the same components. You don't need a 3rd edition. Use all the same components. Just redo the app. Build a better app, right? I think because you've got all the meat and potatoes here. Just build a better app.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. Yeah, and I'm glad that we got to kind of talk about that.
And show the mini. Grab one of those minis out because we want to show you the difference. Like there is a night and day difference between the miniatures in this game and the miniatures in all these other games, right? And
so
I didn't realize how big of a difference it was.
Right.
until we actually painted them and held them side by side.
A couple of these out, and we'll throw a picture of these up.
Yeah, we painted all 6 of the heroes, by the way. And like honestly, like there's a difference here. So let's bring up Destinies as well.
I have to do this.
Right.
Too.
So this is Mansions of Madness. We Lord of the Rings is over there, but they're about the same as the Mansions of Madness. So like look at the difference here. Granted, he's painted, but you see the size difference, right?
Right. Yeah.
When you play with miniatures that big and you play with terrain that's scaled to that size, the experience is that much better.
Yeah, for sure.
Like so.
You can actually tell like who you're. Like hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Like come on. Like, do we even need to go any more further than that? So in any case, that's our roundup for all 4 games. I think before we end this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about pricing.
Yes.
And
this stuff don't come for free.
No, this isn't free. So if we go around, cheapest to most expensive, Destinies retails for around $50.
Right.
Mansions of Madness, Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth retail for around $80.
Right.
Descent retails for $170. However, you can buy it just about anywhere for $130. So I'm going to say it's $130 because that's what I paid for it. Yeah. So is it worth the cost? Is it worth that extra, it's almost twice as much as any of these other games, almost 3 times as much as Destinies. Is it worth it? Is there that much more game in the box?
I say 100%.
Yeah,
actually,
I think
probably
so.
about 300%.
Yeah, I think so. And is it? And look, we'll even touch on the crazy discussions happening now about pricing. Is this pricing people out of the hobby? No, in my opinion, absolutely not. And I think what people don't want to hear and don't want to admit is that board gaming is a luxury hobby. It is not a need; it's a want, right? So when you look at your needs and wants, food, rent, shelter, car, fuel, needs, right?
Right.
Those need to be affordable, absolutely. Games, board games, video games, golfing on the weekends. Those are luxuries, right? Those are extracurricular activities. They're hobbies. Remote control cars, remote control airplanes. If you can't or I can't afford those luxuries, then I can't afford those luxuries.
Well, if you don't want to.
Yeah, or if I don't want to spend the extra money on that. I think there are expensive games, there are cheap games. You can't expect every company to build a game to the same level and the same cost, right? You say, okay, well, games shouldn't cost more than $50, right? iPhone shouldn't cost more than $200. They do. Or cell phones. I'll just say cell phones shouldn't cost more than $200. Can you get a $200 cell phone? Damn straight. Is it the best cell phone out there? Probably not. It's not an iPhone. iPhone's $1,200. Are we saying that Apple's pricing people out of an iPhone?
No, they're making it.
They're making it, right? And people are buying it, right? Yeah. So they're financing it through their phone company for however many years, but you're still paying for it if you want an iPhone,
sure are.
right? Is Lamborghini pricing people out of Lamborghinis? Yeah, they are. But that's intentional because they want an exotic car that rich people can afford, and they want to get money for it, right? They want to make their money for it. Is Descent outpricing other board games? Pricing people out of it? Maybe. Maybe not. But again, it's a luxury.
I have some, I don't know, I have feelings on this. And I said this, I think, when we did our Descent kind of thoughts video. And that is, this kind of goes for, I think, all different kinds of games. Is that there's a lot of different ways to play them. Now, I think that the argument about games being too expensive or pricing people out of the hobby is predicated on the assumption that to be in the hobby, you have to buy the games.
Correct.
Not true. To be a board gamer, you don't have to buy a single game. You might have to do some work to find some people with games you want to play.
Right.
You could, you go to your board game store and
you can go to your board game cafe.
I was going to say,
like
board game
Thirsty
cafe,
Dice,
Thirsty Dice, yeah.
and play any game they have on the shelf.
Right.
And I think they even have Descent on the shelf now.
They
like,
do, yeah.
Go play it. Like,
it's so. Yes, in a way, if your goal is to have a collection of 500 games, then yeah, you're going to have to make some money to acquire that collection. However, if you are wanting to just play some games, there's lots of ways to do that. There's lots of ways to do that. I had mentioned with like Descent, for example, this is a really great game to play with 4 people. Split the cost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you guys are going to get a ton of plays out of it. Probably going to be about the same as like going bowling or, you know, whatever else. But, you know, I kind of feel like we do this a lot. Like, we call our collection. I wouldn't say, we definitely don't have like in the neighborhood of 500, 600 games.
Right.
We frequently trade away for other games.
Yeah.
We do buy games, but we're not, you know, we're not in a position where we're buying every single game we want. We don't back every single Kickstarter we want to back or invest in. You know, but that's a choice that we make. That's a financial kind of decision.
Look, I wanted Descent. It's 130 bucks, 140 bucks. You know, I bought it. What did I do? I sold Descent second edition.
Yes.
I sold with all the expansions that I had, right?
Yeah.
More than paid for this. Done. Exactly. I made a decision. I made a financial decision to sell an old game to buy a new one, right?
Yeah.
You got to make these choices. Does every board game publisher have to make games affordable to everybody in the hobby? Do they have to make sure that everybody gets a chance to play their game? No, they don't. Just like every car dealer doesn't need to make sure that you can buy their car. Just like any store or they're putting out the products. It's up to you to decide whether or not it's worth the investment.
Right, exactly. And I'll tell you this right now. I don't think it has anything to do with being able to afford the game or not. It's more about, like, do you want to spend the money on it? Because there's a ton of games that, to me, honestly, aren't worth it. I'll say Destinies. For 50 bucks, I wouldn't spend the money on it. Because to me, it's not worth the 50 bucks. But to somebody who really enjoys the game or likes the story or their kids really enjoy it, it might be worth it to them. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
This is just how business works, right?
Right.
Because companies are gonna have a certain standard that they want to meet. They have a certain standard and quality that they want to publish in a game. They're going to make premium versions of games. Not to name any companies, but you know, Fantasy Flight's one of them. Eagle Griffin Games. Their games are premium.
Yeah.
They are. I wouldn't want a lower version of their games.
That's the thing. Is
like,
I don't want
for a minute.
I don't want a budget version of BOA.
You know what? If I really want to play it that bad and I can't afford it, I'm gonna go find where I can play it. Right? I'm gonna maybe make a trade for it for somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody out there wants to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody loves every game they buy, so there's ways to get it. But if we sit there and say we want to demand that people keep a certain price range on their board games, then you're constraining these publishers, you're constraining designers, you're constraining costs, right?
Yeah, right. Because people, I mean, at the end of the day, people do have to
make
to money on this. They have to eat. Like,
They've got to pay employees.
Here's the thing. This is your luxury. This is their bread and butter.
Yeah, this is their business.
Is what it comes down to.
And to demand that they give you their product for cheap is
now
not fair.
What I actually do like is, I'll give you an example, like Great Wall, for example.
Yeah.
Awaken Realms just recently, they put out their Kickstarter. Yes, you could back that Kickstarter all in, get all the high-end stuff, all the minis,
hundreds
all this kind of thing. Or you could get the wooden meeples.
Yeah,
you know
it comes with two versions.
Now, do I feel necessarily like that's a budget version of the game? If it's a great game, no. You know what I mean? Would I necessarily want to play like a print and play of the Great Wall? Probably not. I really enjoy that tactile experience. But I think that is a choice that I, as a consumer, am making to say, this is again, it's a luxury. It's something I when I'm sitting down with the game a game I know I really enjoy anyway, and I'm going to spend 2 hours with it. I want to make that investment in the same way that we make the investment in painting minis. Yeah. Right? Like, we didn't have to sit and do that. That took time, which takes money, right? Money. This was our investment, our time to come up with an experience that for us is going to be even more rewarding. And that's not going to be everybody's decision. Not everybody can paint minis. Maybe, you know.
Yeah, you just have to make the choice. Look, do I deserve to play every board game that's published? No.
Well, I think that you deserve to try it.
I deserve to try it, but do I deserve to own it?
That's the distinction. That's what I want to be very clear about.
That's what I meant. Do I deserve to own every game that comes out?
That is, I think, the biggest point, at least for me, is yes, everybody should have an equal opportunity to play games. That's 100%.
Everybody deserves to play every game.
Anything that any of us can do in order to get more games into people's hands to play, I think we should be doing. That, I guess the the debate there would be, are convention tickets overpriced?
Yeah. Are we pricing people out of conventions?
Are we pricing people out of conventions? Are we pricing people out of the opportunity to play games?
Yeah.
That's a conversation I would like to have.
I would like to. Yeah, I think I would. That's worth fighting for. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, at least in, in our position, that's what we try to do, like on our channel, is make sure that people know what they're getting into when they buy these games, that they are having a good experience with them. But in every opportunity we can, we want to help share the board gaming experience so that people have an opportunity to play.
Absolutely. But does everybody deserve to have a 500 board game collection?
No more than I deserve to have 500 pairs of shoes in my closet.
Right, and no more than I deserve to have a private jet.
Yeah.
Right, or have 7 cars.
Right. Yeah.
There's limits to what we are allowed to buy because you're limited by your financial income.
Yeah.
And what you're willing to invest in this stuff. And this is a hobby. And I think at the end of the day, we have to remember, this is a hobby.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to be able to buy every game.
Right.
Not everybody should want to buy every game.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
But I think it's a reasonable goal to say everybody should be able to play every game.
Yeah, I would agree with that,
I would actually love that as a challenge, to say, like, if there's a game that you have been dying to play that you can't get your hands on for one reason or another, I would absolutely love to find a way to hook people up
to get those
with
games
that
to those
game.
people.
Not so that you
Not
can
to
own
own
it,
but you can play
but
it.
so that you can play it and
Right.
you can experience it and you can have a good time with the game.
Yeah, I just think that we all need to get away from the fact that we deserve to have everything.
It's a greed thing.
It's a greed
I
thing.
get it. It's a collector thing, and I'm guilty of it myself.
Like,
I
we
would love
want
to have
believe me, I'd love every
all
game
of
that
the
I see
games.
come out. I'm like, I want that game, I want that game, I want
Yeah.
that game. But at the end of the day, I have to sit there and check myself and say, I can't buy all these games.
Right.
I can't.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't.
Right.
So, and we've been really consciously culling our collection and selling old board games that, to fund new board games. And
Right.
and granted, I want to be very clear too, because you're going to be like, well, you guys are reviewers, you get free copies, you just sell those. Not true. We've never sold a review copy of a game we've gotten. Descent I paid for with my own money, and every single expansion paid for, and every single mini in the base set, the two of us painted. So I sold a fully painted set of Descent 2nd Edition to help pay for Descent.
Yeah.
The new one.
Yeah. Yeah, and we never sell, even we get requests all the time, like, can I buy your prototype of this game?
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm sorry. That's just not, to me, it doesn't seem like the ethical thing to do. So we just don't do it.
Yeah.
But in any case, I think we've rambled on long enough. So you get our stance, right?
Yeah,
everyone deserves to play every game.
Yes.
Not everyone deserves to buy every game. Or to be given every game at a price that they can afford, right?
Yes.
That's the difference. Because everybody just wants, why didn't I get a chance at this game? I can't afford this. I deserve it. Like, we all deserve it.
Everyone deserves food and shelter and respect and goodwill and all that.
And goodwill and all that stuff. But not everybody deserves every luxury item that they want. It's just not. It's not the way the world works. I'm sorry. And that's just the way we see things, unfortunately. But if we could get a game in everybody's hand, we would. But it's just not reality.
Yeah.
But in any case, I think we've gone on long enough.
Yes. So let me think if there's anything else. We've kind of covered, I think, everything we wanted to talk about.
I think so too. I think we've rambled on long enough.
With regards to the apps and whatnot.
So let us know your thoughts. I'm sure you all have opinions on all these games we covered and how apps and games and all that stuff works. And leave it in the comments below. We'll try to be as active as we can in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
See ya.